I want to take Ms. Muya's lead from earlier this morning, and I know we have quite a bit of producers both in the room and outside. I'll pick on you, Culver, the bags. She's looking at me like, what are you doing? But for me, this discussion has to be very practical. It has to make sense to whoever is in the room today and who's looking at trading. So I'll ask you, just indulge us for context purposes. Kova, please stand up. I think if you've been outside, you will see a stand that has beautiful handbags, which are trending everywhere on social media because they are just that great. So thank you very much for your product. But I just really want to ask you a question. When you created Kova, who was your target market and who are you looking at?
Thank you very much and good morning to everybody. To answer your question, it might sound a little selfish, but I created the bag for a woman like myself because I love tote bags, and I thought, I live in Namibia, but I always have to travel abroad to buy this minimalistic type of bag that can carry everything. So I wanted to create a product that's got an international appeal, but for the Namibian woman. So it can be for a student, it can be for a corporate girl, you can wear it to go shopping. So I wanted to create a product that was for the average and any Namibian woman and any woman in the world really who wanted a bag that was versatile. I loved leather, and the fact that we have lots of leather in Namibia locally available, but sort of very limited products that are made from leather is also what drove me to take it up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The reason I ask, and this is a reality for most producers in Namibia, most times when you create a product, I don't think from our experience that when you create a product, it's not always, oh, one day I could export to Nigeria or to Ghana or to South Africa. It's always really for your local market, your friends, your community, church, maybe on Instagram. And the reason the AfCFTA is important is to absolutely allow you to break that ceiling. And I don't mean to sound overly political about this, but that is exactly what it means. If I can try and bring to life what the AfCFTA means, and I've given this example once too many times. In this room, if where we're sitting is Africa, right? Imagine that this room sitting here is Africa. And maybe at the service station down the road over there, that's Europe, right? So at present, we're trading less in this room with each other. We're actually trading more with Europe that's right down the road. But look at what we have working for us. Number one, we're closer in proximity. We about speak the same language. We understand our context. We understand what we're trying to do. And so it makes more sense for this room that's closer in distance, in language, in lifestyle, in culture, to trade with each other than take a raw product from this room, send it all the way down there by ship, by plane, or whatever you may, and export it. So the AfCFTA is trying to make sure that this room trades more and better with each other. And so if you're here and you're a producer or even an aspiring producer, and I'm sure will share his reflections as well in their work in SMEs, it's really also about the mind shift. We can do our work and do cross all our T's and dot all our I's in terms of policy, but if we're not encouraging a mind shift in terms of our businesses and our entrepreneurs to say, well, guess what? Namibia is not your only marketplace. You could actually send it to Zambia, to Botswana, to Angola. It's possible. So this is a plea from us, and I know that Honorable DM shares my sentiments, and thank you very, very much for those remarks. Thank you, Ms. Kapanda. I really love your approach towards making the work that you do practical and real. The work that Ministry of Works and Transport has done to help facilitate trade is something we cannot do without. Honorable DM, thank you very, very much, because she was enjoying everything that was on display. So thank you for your commitment, for your passion, for working with us, for believing in what we want to do. And so for this room, if you're a producer or you're looking to produce, we encourage you from even a mind shift perspective. Dream big, dream bigger, aim higher, because it is possible. And guess what? Along the way, the likes of the Namibia Trade Forum, the Agricultural Trade Forum, NIPDB, the ministry, the UN, we're all lined in that corridor to help you smooth the process. And so we're not here to pass clever remarks. We want you to talk to us after we finish this meeting. If there's something you don't understand, I must applaud the gentleman here who I discovered. He gave me his card and I said, wait, is your oil the brown bottle with the gold? So we know your product, it's on my shelf, I'm using it for my hair. He's cheering, he's happy. But that's exactly what it means. For us, we want to make sure, soon after, before we started our break, he approached Deputy Minister and he said, I heard you talking about this and this and this document. Well, where do I go? That is the kind of engagement that we're looking for. And I said to him, go and speak to NAMRA because they're custodian of some of these things. So the work we do is not meant for our officers. It's not to keep in our briefcases. It's meant to benefit you. So please approach us, speak to us. If you haven't heard of the Namibia Trade Forum, now you know. We will help you. NIPDB is here, the UN is here, NSI is here, the banks are here. So this is your opportunity to get yourself out there. So thank you once again for being here this morning. It means absolutely everything to us. I think the panel has been introduced. Most of them I know and I work with, so this is going to be very casual, if I may say. But really, the spirit that I want this conversation to take is practical and meaningful. Your reflections, your experiences, and the work that you've done, but most importantly, where do you see the opportunities? And I think anchoring that is thinking about how this room can start to prepare to trade under the CFTA, not only for this room, but so that they too can spread the knowledge and help others. So thank you very, very much to my panel today. Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, this is interesting. We have an exact split of men and women. Not by design, literally, but I'm glad it's worked out. So thank you very, very much. We have the zebra style in the room. I'm very encouraged by that. Good. So I'm going to just start off trying to anchor this conversation and maybe just give us a bit of context in terms of where Namibia is on the CFTA agreements. A lot of young people ask me, what is Namibia's position? What is happening? But maybe before we deal with that, I'm going to open up with you, Mr. Nashikaku. Mr. Asa Nashikaku is the Director for Trade Agreements in the Ministry of Industrialization and Trade. And I think it's very apt that you start this conversation just to give us a bit of a rundown in terms of where Namibia is in the process of the AfCFTA, but particularly how close are we to the line before day one, before somebody in this room can send a shipment on a reduced tariff to Ghana or Nigeria.
Maybe I should start saying that at least Namibia, as already the previous speakers have already indicated, we're one of the countries who have at least signed. But the key issue here today is to make sure that at least we start creating commercially meaningful trade actually happens. In that particular score, I would like to inform you that at least we are negotiating the agreement, phase 1 issues and phase 2 issues. This is what the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is all about. Now, phase 1 issue actually contains trade in goods and also trade in services, whereby phase 2 issues are issues related to intellectual property rights, investment, and also competition. Now, in the area of phase 1 issues, we have really done a lot of work. And at this point in time, we have already at least negotiated within, first and foremost, maybe I should state, that the Namibian offer within the AfCFTA is actually done within the framework of SADC. And at this point in time, internally, we have at least reached about 89.6%. So we are actually having about 28 tariff lines for us to be able then to submit tariff lines, and therefore to be able then for that particular tariff line, or rather offer, to be able then to be accepted, for us to be able to start trading. Within the framework, the 5 member states, we have put ourselves a deadline to ensure that at least within the next 2 months, 1 or 2 months, we should be able to finalize that particular process. Now, in terms of trade in services, I should state that Namibia is one of the 14 countries that have already submitted what we call the schedule of specific tariff commitment in trade in services. And currently, we are actually expecting the head of states to meet, probably in Niger, to be able to adopt those particular schedule specific commitments. And once that is done, then obviously in terms of trade in services, we can then trade. Unfortunately, you can only trade among those 14 countries that have submitted their offer. And that should be clear. But we are also expecting a number of offers on that particular front. Now, in terms of the tariff offers that I have just mentioned, we then expect us also to finalize it, submit it, and probably be adopted by the head of state. And once that is actually done, then trading will actually happen. I think I should end up here, and then I can answer the next questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ashkaf. I think that gives us really good context. In your view, in terms of Namibia, are we on track to making sure that we're submitting what we need to submit in time?
Yes, of course. Within the framework of SAP, once again, we've already submitted what is actually required. But what is very much important also is to understand then the agreement itself. The agreement then requires that the tariff commitments is actually supposed to be, or rather the tariff reduction commitments is actually supposed to happen over a period of 5 years for developing countries, and 10 years for the least developing countries. Now, I think even the Honorable Deputy Minister has stated that the launch for trading actually was done in 2021, meaning that will be the reference point. So, in other words, if you are going to submit your offer, maybe 2 years later, the reference point will be 2021, and your reduction commitments should just actually specify that. So that 5 or 10 years later, your tariff line should be at 0. And this is very much important because then it allows duty-free access of Namibian products and other state parties into the African continent, with the ultimate goal, obviously, to increase intra-African trade, creating then wealth to our citizenry and industrializing Africa.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I thought it's important for the room to understand from policy perspective where Namibia is, how far along we have come in the process, and maybe potentially how much is left before in the past couple of days. And I know that we all know in the room, NAMRA wants to collect the money. That is very, very important. But you also play a very critical role in terms of trade facilitation. We cannot overemphasize that when the shipment comes or leaves, at one point it is going to meet a customs official. It is you that is going to be the custodian of the documents that should process some of these shipments. Maybe from a customs perspective, what kind of work is going on to ensure that Namibia is ready for day one? But also maybe what kind of role can the private sector play, if at all, to hasten that process? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. As it was alluded, our role basically is to facilitate trade, collect revenue, as well as protect society. Now, in terms of the how prepared we are, I should also touch on the protocol of trade in goods that my colleague previously alluded to. NAMRA and specifically customs role comes into play at the rules of origin, where we have to certify that goods that exit the Namibian market is actually goods that were either of Namibian origin. Is it too loud? Okay, of Namibian origin, and there are two criteria here, which is your wholly obtained products, your natural products, your fish, your diamonds, everything that comes from the soil or either grown here. And then we have the other criteria, that is your sufficiently transformational process. Now, it was really good. I need to just step off the topic and say the way the session was arranged was really good, because it really gave us an opportunity to work past through all the displays. And already one could, and I engaged most of the traders there, the exhibitors, and I did ask, where do you get your products from? How do you make it? Because that ultimately would qualify you to get a certificate of origin when and if you export these particular goods out of the country. But then just bear in mind that for you to then qualify or benefit under the preferential trade agreement, you need to register as an exporter under the AfTC. So that then, for that, you need to get to NAMRA. We would want to know the processes that goes through having that final product on the shelf. There's Kova, she gave a brief explanation of how she makes her bags. There were beauty products as well. So we would want to know where you source your materials from, what are the processes that takes place. If one, for instance, also have to look at, yes, we all know that we have fish in Namibia, but is it really a Namibian originating product? We would all say yes. But then with each trade agreement, and especially even the AfCFTA, if it's fish that is exported, yes, we know we have fish, but there are conditions that must be applied for that particular consignment to get a certificate. For instance, the vessel must fly under a Namibian flag. 50% of the crew must be Namibian, because we have Russians fishing in our waters, isn't it? We have Chinese. But okay, we are one country, but we need to make sure that the work that goes into the labor is from a Namibian in order to give that originating status. As NAMRA, what we have done so far in preparing for trading under the AfCFTA, we have already prepared the certificates of origin. It's drafted, it's printed, it's ready at our offices. We have prepared the stamps that will certify the originating status of that particular product for export. Yeah, and also to mention that the e-tariff is also ready in terms of the AfCFTA. Yeah, that's in short what I would say now. Yeah.
Thank you very much. You raise a very important point, and I know from experience in the number of businesses and producers that we've met from somewhere around the continent or the world, and maybe had one or two transformation processes. What I mean by that is you would get a raw product from, say, an oil, right? Or shea butter. Let me give that example. Namibian cosmetics industry thrives on shea butter from Ghana. So you bring that in and you use the shea butter to make a body balm or something. The point that she mentions is very valid, because we're very quick to say 100% Namibian. But is it, from a technical perspective, actually 100% Namibian? Can you get a certificate that says, yes, you are 100% Namibian? And she gave two examples. The way that can happen is wholly, which means it's something that's taken from a Namibian soil, a potato, an onion, etc. But there's another route which would have gone through some transformation process. But even that has requirements to show that the bulk of the value add has happened here. And this is information that sometimes our producers take for granted. We assume that because we are positioned and living in Namibia, everything we produce is Namibian. That is not the qualifying factor. So this is just to trigger the room and have you thinking about whether your product is actually 100% Namibian. Because when you start trading under the CFTA, such issues will matter, and you have to show some level of compliance as a producer. So that's just homework for you to think about. Thank you very, very much for those insights. I think they were very useful in just positioning the room around how we take this forward. I'm going to touch on something which I speak to quite often when I engage with private sector, and that's the issue of standards. I'm seeing a lot of nodding in the room because we know exactly what that means. And if you've been functioning in the Namibian economy, which all of us, I hope, have been doing, you know that there is quite a number of push towards making sure that we're buying local, that we're supporting our local economies. The Buy Local Grow Namibia campaign, NAB has some really great work going on. But the argument always is, well, I want to buy Namibian, but I'm not sure about the quality. I saw something on Instagram the other day that said a lady was proudly talking about how she prefers to wear international clothing, but just for the sake of buying local, she's going to support some local producers. So this is something that comes up too often in our work, the issue of standards. If I'm making a jam in my kitchen, it tastes really great, but have I thought about how long it will stay on the shelves before it goes bad? Can I verify that my buyer and my consumer will be safe when they apply that jam on their bread? What have I used to make that jam? Maybe some people are allergic. Did I put that on my bottle? Branding is another key thing. It's not just about creating a pretty picture that is attractive. You owe your consumers information. You have to tell them, well, in this product, there is peanuts, there is milk, so that people that are allergic would know not to buy that product. So yes, we're promoting and pushing for local products, but the issue of standards is critical, not only from a consumer perspective, but when we say this is 100% Namibian and there's a shipment all the way to Ghana, we have to be sure that the Ghanaians don't die because we didn't do our homework. And here with us today is Mr. Mutonga. I was telling him that his height makes me very uncomfortable because I feel small standing next to him, but that is all right. I said to him that, it would be useful to just situate the room in terms of how is Namibia doing from a standards perspective. And something I really want to mention, because most times the NSI comes under heat because we don't have standards for this, we don't have standards for that. But to my understanding, the NSI cannot by itself create standards. Did we know that? Okay, I'm hearing yes and no's. So the way that the NSI functions, and I'm sorry for taking your role, is that an industry, a sector of the industry would approach them and say, look, there is this potential in terms of this. We think it's necessary for Namibia to create a standard. Can we then work with you to create the standard? So the NSI cannot, in its management meeting, decide, oh, we think a standard for the private sector, because we create the case for them to create those standards, in case we didn't know. I just thought to use that as a precursor to make your job slightly easier. But really keen to understand, where is Namibia on a standards perspective? How are we doing?
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stacey. And I'm so glad to note that probably the majority in the room do appreciate what standards are. And if that is not the case, then I will also touch a little bit on what standards are. But to answer the question, as you rightly put it, the NSI plays a facilitation role in the production of standards. So we do not determine. What we can do is to advise, actually. So industry players need to approach the NSI if they see that their product needs to be regulated. Okay, they approach the NSI, And then technical committees are formed, or a technical committee on that particular request is formed, after which they then draw up the standard and it goes through the process. And if you want it to be enforceable, then obviously technical regulations are actually issued to regulate that product. So, in short, I wish to encourage all industry players who are here. If by any chance you want your product to be regulated or you want a specific standard, then you need to approach us and then to follow through that process. It's not a lengthy process. Once you have approached us, then we will guide you on the process. I'm actually glad that I met this morning through the exhibition a representative of the cosmetics industry. We will be, I think in 2 weeks' time, we will be launching their standard. And that is because they found the urge to deliberate or to discuss with NSI on the development and issuance of their standard. Now, from a holistic point of view, perhaps I just need to quickly give that so that we all appreciate what we do. The NSI has a delegated mandate of the Ministry of Industrialization and Trade to implement the national quality policy. Now, from the national quality policy, you deduce the national, what we call the national quality infrastructure. Now, this has 4 legs, which ensures that there is quality products, or products that you find on the shelves are of a quality nature. You have the part where a standard is developed, of course, in relation with the industry. And then you have what we call our certification department or the certification body that ensures that whatever is included in the standard is actually enforced that way. Then we have the testing and inspection, which is based on at the cost, and they save more the fishing industry. And then finally, we have the metrology guys, and I would like to use a very clear example on this one. Not long ago, you might have heard, see, when petrol prices were increasing, there was an outcry. We've gone through to this service station, and the pump might have been tampered with. Okay? Now, that is where the metrology part of the NSI comes in to ensure that there is fair trade between a consumer and a supplier. So finally, just to give to answer your question in terms of where we are, we have done very well considering that the NSI is relatively it's a baby, if I may. But we have done very well. We have encouraged industry players to approach us to develop these standards. And some standards have gone to the level of technical regulations. You might be aware of the hand sanitizer, for instance. That is a product that is regulated by the NSI. Yeah, so there is interest. There is interest from the public in terms of engaging us, and I must say we are getting there. A lot of standards are available on our website and on all our platforms. They are sold for a very small fee. But what we are saying is, if the product has to be regulated, then that approach needs to come from industries themselves. And these standards are actually produced within the confines of the World Trade Organization. While we will appreciate the fact that Namibia is part of the WTO. So basically our role there is to ensure that we eliminate, as a country, technical barriers to trade.
Thank you. Thank you for that sort of last remark, because I do want to have a follow-up on that. For purposes of people who are sitting in this room, why is it important for producers to comply to a standard? From a maybe trading perspective, but also from a consumer perspective, because the world of standards can be quite technical and daunting, actually, if you're looking from the outside in. But practically, why should somebody sitting in this room walk away knowing that the next step my business needs to take is the standards route? Why is that important?
All right. As I alluded to earlier, to say the issue is to ensure that there is consumer protection. There is also protection on the part of suppliers. I will be using examples because not long ago, most people would think that the NSI is some kind of an educational institution, which is not, and we have this critical role to play in the economy and towards our GDP as well. So, for a business or for a product to be standardized, it's very important both for the producer and for the consumer, because then a group of people or a group of experts come together to say, this is how, let me give an example of a hand sanitizer. This is how a hand sanitizer will be produced. It has to have 75% alcohol for it to be effective. Now, for the producer, they need to produce that sanitizer based on those standards that have been agreed by the industry players, okay, to say this is the best. And they are protected at that level. Now, if you go onto the side of the consumer, it's really to give peace of mind to the person who is buying that product, to say, okay, this product has been certified to be in compliance with the standard by the NSI. So you will go home if you purchase this product, knowing that you have purchased a product that will not compromise your health, yourself, and all that comes with it. So basically, that is where we come in. It's for the protection of the supplier and the consumer, to ensure that the products that we take are of the best quality and that we are not compromised as a nation.
Thank you very, very much for that. I hope the conversations so far are triggering some thoughts and some questions, because I'm really keen to have a robust engagement on all this. Maybe I'll come to Mr. Balotti, the lead dancer for ML Music, but most importantly, he's wearing the hat of Executive Director at the NIPDB, looking after SMEs, acceleration and innovation. Did I get it correctly?
It's a mouthful.
Yes. Just keen to hear your views and your reflections in your experience, particularly in the SME space. What are we seeing in Namibia, and where are the shoots for growth? If somebody is not actively in production as we speak, where are we seeing the potential? And maybe coupled to that, where are we lacking?
Okay. Thank you, Stacey. Good afternoon again to everyone. Apologies that I wasn't here this morning. I attended another event at Country Club and rushed here, but I think the flowers befitting for the session today. And I'm not here to speak as a politician. We're really just here to speak from experience. Last week, we attended a session hosted by the NTF for the assessment of Namibia's e-commerce readiness, of which there's a really great report on. I've not read yet, sorry, Stacey. And it's relevant because the work that the NTF is doing to ensure the collaboration, the coordination, the commitment, I call it the 3 C's. It's pivotal if we're to do more as a country. So if you forget everything I say, those 3 C's, the collaboration, I'm even forgetting it, the coordination and the commitment, it's a multi-sector approach. It requires public sector, it requires offices, ministries, agencies. So really, if we talk about that mind shift that you mentioned earlier, especially for the entrepreneurs and the small business owners in the room, which I assume to be most of the Namibians in the room, we really need to start speaking about innovation. We need to be speaking about doing things a little bit differently. We're not talking about tech innovation. I know there's a bit of a startup definition that I don't agree with as a Namibian. I don't believe we need to only have tech to be considered a startup, but that's another conversation. I had a meeting with the head buyer of ShopRite 2 days back, and she was speaking about the Namibian producers that are coming to provide her with products. They're not very innovative. It's cookies and it's jam. Respectfully, my favorite farmer, I saw her outside from a Congo. Is she in the room? She's not in the room. Okay, that's the best water I've tasted in Namibia. And I was very fortunate to meet her last week in Ohangwena or at Inana at the Conflex. But that water is amazing water from a Congo. And I think I'm so glad that this is Namibian water that we're drinking. Because the innovations, it's not about high-tech innovations. It's about doing something a little bit differently and packaging it as a Namibian package. So coming to the standards conversation, I wanted to add to that with a practical example. So my mother-in-law, she often refers to cool drink as Oros. And I say it's not Oros. Oros is very specific. And anything that is unmarked cool drink is Oros. And I said, no, it's not. So that's obviously why the standard is so important for us, right? And really, on the sanitizer comment, when COVID broke out, we, as micro enterprises, we thought let's quickly be reactive to this. You create a solution to a problem, and we tried to sell sanitizer, and we got a small, shall I call it a tender, but thereafter they started asking for the standards, which we couldn't produce, and then we lost that tender, so thank you, NSI. But I see Honorable DM is in the room, and really, if we talk about Honorable Sinimbo, she walks the talk. Her chili, I'm sorry I'm putting you on the spot, Honorable. Her chili is the world's best chili, right? But I'm very disappointed in her, because that chili is not scaling to sell into Africa. And I think when we talk about a hustle, as entrepreneurs, as young people, as Namibians, how do you formalize that hustle? How do we actually say we need barcoding, we need quality packaging, we need information, and we can scale this, and we can employ some people to do what maybe we're doing on a Sunday. So Honorable Sinimbo, I'm calling you out for that chili to be on shelves. But I really want to come back to your question and not take all the time, Stacey. So the Buy Local Grow Namibia campaign, which is championed by the Ministry of Industrialization and Trade, NTF, and other stakeholders, it's an excellent initiative. And as we sit here today as Namibians, why are we not buying Namibian product? But my own practical example I want to give you. When it's water and jam and Oros, we don't mind spending 30, 40, 50 Namibian dollars, right? Okay. So some few weeks ago, our bed broke, and I need to buy a new bed. I don't know if any of you have bought beds, the price of beds. And I went in there, and I'm very proudly Namibian, and you give me anything, I always choose Namibian. But now there was a Namibian mattress versus an international mattress. And I was in a bit of a conundrum because I champion buying Namibian. But now we talk about many thousands. Am I really going to buy this Namibian mattress? Because initially, I thought maybe the standard of this mattress is not at the standard of a Sealy Posturepedic or whatever the brand is. And I almost want to sort of ask each and every one of you in the room, if you honestly want to buy local and grow Namibia, you need to be deliberate about it. The cost of milk as an irrational consumer, if a Clover milk, and please, thank you to Clover, right? But if Clover milk is $5 more expensive or $5 cheaper than Namibian milk, damn dairies, do we buy the Clover milk or do we buy the other milk? And please don't, I apologize, but the potentials for micro, small, and medium enterprises and startups, you have to start as a small business. Don't come to us as the NIPDB or even to a commercial bank and say we need 10 million to scale our operations. You need to start, and there are many sectors in Namibia. I think Namibia is the ultimate place to be in, to live in, and we're all very proud in Namibia, but there are ample opportunities for entrepreneurs. So if we're talking about scaling it, don't tell me or Stacey or anyone, I want to sell my product into the Angolan market with 34 million people, which is right next door. In Rundu, you can throw a stone across the river and you're in Angola, right? But yet we can't sell that product in Namibia. So let's really try to understand what are the processes to get that product onto a Namibian shelf, if at all possible, and then try to scale it into Africa. It's almost like a footballer, and that's my last point. Many of the young Namibian footballers, they want to go and play overseas or play professionally, but you've not showcased what you can do in Namibia, and now you want to go outside of Namibia. So I challenge you to first showcase in Namibia, and if you're not getting help, come knock on our door, Instagram, Facebook, whatever you need to do, and then let's try and get into Africa. Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you very much for that, you mentioned a point that I constantly give as an example. Growing our economy is about intentionality. And for us, the more this message around buying local and growing Namibia becomes common, the easier it is for somebody to walk into the stores and actually think, is this Namibia? And I'm very proud to say that in the past 2 years, the amount of Namibian stuff you find on the shelves, you don't have to look. In the fruit and veg section, you will find, I know there's Oshivelo Farms, I know all of them, and I know exactly what they produce. And so I think just echoing Dino's message, in this room, you are a consumer, but you're also one that can support industry, because you are the ones that go into the stores, and it's about intentionality. So if you haven't looked afterwards Namibian, we challenge you today. Go into ShopRite and Pick and Pay. Milk, bread, detergent, most of your food basket, you can find proudly Namibian. So thank you for that, Dino. I'll come back to you on a point around potentially what the NIPDB is doing to support that kind of work, but really keen to hear thoughts from the UNDP, maybe from a developmental perspective. Why is this work important, not only to you as an institution, but what does it help promote in terms of Namibia's growth, in terms of its economics, but most importantly, what initiatives has the UN engaged in to support the Namibian government in this perspective, particularly on the issue of AfCFTA?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Stacey. And let me just, before I come into responding to your question, also I would really like to thank NTF for putting up this event, and very happy to see all of these exhibits. It gives one a good feeling, and I think the Grow Local campaign is bringing out results. So that's great. And I think now we are on to the next step in also going regional, right, to the continent from the local. I think these are the kind of levels of development we do. So I agree with Dino. Yes, you don't need to just go off with it. Start off big, start small, because I think the small ones are the ones who can actually add so much value to the products. And this is why we come into all of those value chains that we are talking about. They are very, very critical. So even if you are a milk producer, just don't produce that milk, put it in that box and market it. But there are other products as well. Move on in terms of the value chain. But what is very critical in all of these, I've been listening very carefully. And what I would like to, and I would like to add to the 3 C's that Dino said, and the other one C I would like to add is about connecting. And I would also like to add 2 I's to it, and that is very important. All of these aspects, whether it is in terms of the regulations, the awareness and knowledge is going to be key for all of us. So we actually need to come up with a system which is sort of user-friendly in putting together that sort of a manual that each producer and trader wants to know of. So, and that brings me also to the work that UNDP is doing in terms of promoting, not only promoting AfTA, but about leveraging those opportunities. And Mr. Nashikapu mentioned about the timeline in terms of phasing out the tariffs. But I think Namibia is at that stage, it gives us that much time to get prepared, to bring up those productive capacities in our women and youth, to take them to that level. And this is what the work UNDP is very much interested and invested in, along with our partners, obviously, because it's nothing that we can do alone. So what we do as UNDP is we keep mobilizing small catalytic funding to sort of indicate that these things can be done, how they can be done, how people can be brought together through a very connected, integrated, and innovative approach to bring out these products, right? And this is something where you start small. As I mentioned earlier in the morning, we are also not looking at the informal trade. 60% of Namibia's trade is in the informal sector. It's getting about, and this is not rare good estimates, it's about 13 million Namibian dollars which are being earned in that, but it's not counted for anything. So this is where we talk about the connecting and integrated approach that we need to do. So if we are to leverage the AfCFTA, we need to invest in our people, in the skills development. Very important, right? Some are there, and let's have them at mentoring others. We can't do everything ourselves. The other important aspect, there was a talk about those policies. All of these policies, whether it's standards, whether it is revenue, whether it is investment, competition, your IPRs, the intellectual property, all of these policies should be complementary, right? We shouldn't have areas where we are trying to promote something in one area and then not being able to do that. And then likewise, for all of this to happen, how can we get Namibia to be that attractive investment hub? What are those areas? What are those policies? And I would also reach out and appeal to our Home Affairs, Immigration, in terms of the kind of visas, the kind of technical capacities, the technology you can attract in terms of this. So how do you open up the country, right? So these are some of those issues, I think, where we would need to leverage that. And as I mentioned about UNDP, we are here as development partners. We are working specifically on capacity development, also in raising these, through these awareness meetings that we are having. We would also be going in for further training in terms of the export areas as well, again, across the country, not only focusing on Windhoek, with a particular focus on women and youth, because unless and until you are inclusive, you cannot, give that fillip to that. So, and the other thing, sorry, just one last point. I mean, today we saw how many cosmetics did we see outside, right? It's good, that's good, but how do we don't also want to fragment the place. We need to come together in some, and again, standards in that become very important. And if you're going to market and export markets, the rules of origin are going to be key in that. Let us also challenge ourselves to see what are the other niche items. If we are to take advantage of the Continental Free Trade Area, because these are excellent products, not to say anything about that, but every African country is into cosmetics, right? Marula oil is particularly in this part of the country, it's all there. What is that? Pricing. Pricing is a huge issue. Dino was raising the issue about milk. The price plays a very important role. So if the Namibian milk, if you make it $5 cheaper, you see how it flies off the shelves. I mean, sorry, but it's human psychology, right? So we also need, and when you are growing it, and it's within the country, that's exactly where we need to be going.
Thank you, Ms. Bhatia, and really just to acknowledge you and I want to take on, is it now the quadruple C's and 2 I's invented here in this room, but really just to applaud your commitment towards the Namibian government's development plans. Without your support, this work would not happen. So we want to thank you publicly for your commitment in that regard. And I think something that speaks squarely to each government's development plans is your SDGs. All of them really have a point to play in terms of each country's development agenda. And I think it is for this room as well to know about some of these opportunities. I heard you speaking about catalytic funding. I don't know if this room knows about it. Do we have anybody from Ms. Alka's team? Sophia, if you could just put your hand up. Approach them, find out what is going on and what they're doing, because you might just expose yourself to an opportunity to scale and export, or rather access a different market. So thank you very, very much for that work. I'm sure we have quite a number of questions coming your way. Maybe just to wrap up this session before I open up for Q&A, Maria, you have a very impressive sort of background in trade and trade policy. I think you absolutely are right on top in terms of Namibia's minds in trade and agricultural policy. Thank you for the work that you've done there. But I want to pick your brain particularly on where the opportunities lie for Namibia. I know you do quite a bit of mentoring and coaching and looking at how do we get this from phase 1 right to export. You've done quite a bit of work in that space as well. But really just to bring the room alive to what the opportunities are. And very Namibian, if I can say. You are a daughter of the soil. You understand our landscape. You understand what we're capable of doing. Where are the opportunities? Where should they be looking?
Thank you very much, Stacey. And thank you to my panel. I wanted first to say the Namibian milk is produced under an organic environment. So there's a health incentive to you to buy Namibian milk as opposed to GMO-induced type of production. So that $5 is for your health, okay?
There you go.
Yeah, can I get a round of applause for that? Thank you. Before I come to that, Stacey, really, I wanted to say, I have already sort of tried to answer the topic. And of course, government negotiates and facilitates trade. Private sector trades. Yeah. And there are two ways. So my question is, we are opening up the market. The question is, are we ready to actually receive other products in our market? So that's another question. Are we ready? We'll be trading with the big countries like Nigeria, Ghana. What does that mean? Are we ready as a country? And I wanted to touch a bit on that because I'm taking advantage. You know, when you're a policymaker, private sector, you take advantage of the executives in the room to get the message. And this is the message we are preaching all the time. Namibia needs a trade board of trade. And that board of trade is to implement trade. So if we take stock of how we're implementing international trade negotiation right now, we'll see where we are lacking. And really, as people in the sector, I'm also in trade, we want to see that institution because it's getting ready in terms of institution. Are we institutionally ready for the African market? And why is that board of trade important? Because if a product comes in here and is flooding our markets, do we have the ability to talk about dumping? Yeah? Anti-dumping, countervailing measures. And that can only come in when we look at our structure where we are. We are in a SAFU customs union with a big brother South Africa. We all know how that goes. Yeah, that's one. The second part is we need to create industries. Yeah? Our country is too much dependent on one company, two companies there. If you come to standard, he says industry sets standards, not one company, not one product. You have to have industries. For the cosmetic sector to get where it is, it has to grow and people have to come together and approach. And now they are going to have a cosmetic standard. So we need to create industries. So how do you create industries? I'll give an example. Of course, South Africa as a leading economy has a board of trade, which is called ITEC. And that's why we need that. What ITEC does is they have incentives for creating industries. Yeah? So if we have to get into juice making, yeah, South Africa also imports concentrate from the world market. So that concentrate is important and is seen as an input into production. And because it's an input into production, you get incentive in terms of rebate. So NAMRA will say, okay, you are then importing this product, it's going into manufacturing, it's 300,000. We will rebate you that. What does that make the company? It makes you competitive. Now you can compete with South Africa because South Africa is getting that rebate. But in Namibia, you are not. Okay, so that's just, I wanted to make that mark to say, are we ready? So institution-wise, we have to get ready. Honorable Deputy Minister, we really want the Board of Trade Bill to get back into the process. I don't know where it is now, I'm sure it's back, but we really, really want it. It's the only thing for us to create industries and promote industrialization. On the other side is actually getting ready as a product. So, and I'm coming to your question in terms of opportunity. So, the work that we are doing currently, we are training manufacturers to get them export ready. And I must say, the trainer from COVA, she's one of the ladies on this program that we're implementing. And when you take a product like COVA, it's a good product outside. You can buy it and you can go with it all over the way you buy the market. You can't just try to export to Nigeria, Ghana, Tanzania. It's impossible, unless of course you are a big company later. But even ITCO is struggling. They're getting into Ghana only a step at a time. So it's market identification is an opportunity. But then maybe the opportunity here for the young people, I know this gentleman here is into research, right? And you want to go home with an opportunity. How can you add value to this process, right? So who is doing market identification for this for the manufacturer? It's a costly exercise, but it also requires obviously knowledge in the sector, research. So again, there's so much if you look at one company and how to get them export ready and actually creating an export strategy within by identifying the market. So you want to go to Ghana. Okay, now what are the requirements, trade compliance for you to actually move that product to Ghana? Again, we find that a lot of small SMEs or manufacturers, they don't have the capacity. And they don't have to anyways, yeah, because they're in the production. So there's a lot of opportunity along the chain. Who takes the product from here to the next step? And I think this is a lot of opportunity in there for young people to come in, become the middleman between the manufacturer and moving the product. There's a lot of opportunities on branding. You talked about a niche market. So what is our niche? But also niche is how you brand your products, right? We take our beef to Europe. We can't even compete with the New Zealanders and the Brazilians. But we are there getting the highest value on the quantity that we are doing because we export it under a niche branding of organic. And it's high value, so the people that buy our meat is actually people that are health conscious and are actually trying to get that $5 up like the milk for their health incentives. So again, it's getting that message out. So branding opportunities are there, but then again, the digital economy is the biggest opportunity for the trade, Continental Trade Agreement, but for the young people, and creating all these spin-off opportunities, solutions to actually trade across the border. And Mr. Nashkapu mentioned in terms of the faces, so trade services, and I know the Deputy Minister also mentioned some of the payment solutions that are coming. So you find that if you want to get your product there, you have to move it, but you also want to get paid. So what are some of those initiatives? And by the way, Namibia, young people, we are just sleeping. In the other countries, this CFTA is such a big buzz to young people. They are hosting their own workshops. They are trying to see where they can create opportunities around it and understanding the legal provisions. So maybe in conclusion, I want to say actually the main thing is actually understanding the legal provisions. It doesn't mean that you don't trade when you don't have an agreement, by the way. We are trading with China. We don't have a trade agreement with China. We are trading on an MFN basis. The agreement is negotiated to lower their tariff that you would pay on a product. If you are importing or exporting that product into the market, they charge you that 40%. So Mr. Nashikaku is negotiating for you for that tariff to come down, hopefully 5 years to zero, right? That's how you enter the market. But it's not to say you can't export it to that market if you don't have that agreement. It's just to give you competitiveness and preference. But how do you actually access that 40% down? Is you understanding the trade agreement and the provisions that were spoken about by Stacey, the technical barriers to trade, the rules of origin. So what does this product say? That you must 60% Namibia, 40% you can import, and Namora will give you a certificate of origin. That you must prove, because they will not allow you to give you, they will not give you preference if you don't have the compliance. And that compliance is done back end into the production processes. So that's actually what we are doing to the work that we are doing with the small businesses, trying to get them export ready, trying to get them understand export compliance, and then just basic things like labeling and packaging. And labeling and packaging is also specific to markets. You can't just label and package generally. Now you're going to Angola and they say, no, but your thing must be in Portuguese. You know, if you go to Europe, they'll say, okay, in your milk you must indicate 1, 2, 3, mandatory. So the rest you can or not. And those are really the technical things that add value, but somebody has to do it. And that somebody can be you, and those are some of the opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Maria. Just to touch very slightly, and it's a pity Honorable DM had to go to another engagement, but just the Board of Trade, the NTF was actually quite involved in, I think you're aware as well, in trying to come up with the regulations which have been submitted to the ministry, and you're very correct in saying that that conversation has to be resuscitated because it is the anchor of how we proceed as a country. So thank you very much. A couple of things that she spoke to, and I'm appreciative to you, Maria, because I think the room was expecting you to say, leave your job, go and be a farmer. There is a market for potatoes in Zambia, or leave your job, go and start herding cattle. It's not that deep. I like that the opportunities you speak to are ones that are within our reach. You spoke about issues such as branding, market intelligence, identifying markets. And I think this is some of the realities that we've seen in our work is that we assume that people know. They don't. And if young people in this room or even listening live can position themselves to amass information and make it available, whether you do it as a consultant or whatever the case may be, the opportunities are there. Branding, the digital economy. I'm so impressed by the number of IT solutions that are coming out of Namibia. So think about how you can plug into another market and offer that as a service. So I'm really grateful because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're saying work with what you have, and as Alka said, tweak it a little bit, make it a little bit more innovative, and see how you offer that to a market. So thank you very much. I'm going to open up for Q&A.
One is a comment, and then one is a question. We were talking about the milk and all other products. I think the understanding should be the way Namibians think. It's always that we limit ourselves. We already indicated that we want to become a logistical hub for SADC. Now, pricing is always about economy of scale. Obviously, our health issue and all of that issue. And now, this opportunity gives us another level of, instead of just a 2 million, we were supposed to already use an advantage of SADC of the 300 million. And now it's 1.something billion. So that part, I think we need to start educating ourselves on that as Namibian. Otherwise, this issue of everybody flooding the market here would be something which will be a reality. Now, I wanted to just a quick one. The preparedness of Namibia, I thought that would be discussed on directly to Namra. Now, most of our products, which we have a competitive advantage, we already have market. Look at the market for that matter. The one which you don't have, those are the ones which might attract the issue of rules of origin. That's why we have to have this discussion. I hope now, through our preparedness, the issue of the Peugeot does not come into the fore, because our input cost on all of these issues will make sure that we don't benefit from this reduction of tariff. Because if we have not worked across some of those issues, NAMRA will not be able to assist us in the reduction of tariffs. So I just want to find out the preparedness, especially in the lesson learned through our involvement under SACO and the pressure factor, which we now almost becoming a challenge to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Joseph Haloti. I'm the acting head of International and Business Studies in the Ministry of Finance. I've got one comment and one question, but my first comment has been already almost addressed by Maria. I know that we are now very much excited because the agreement, the CFTA agreement, is now entered into force, and we are now looking for market opportunities. I think we should not only focus on offensive interest. Our approach, how we are going to penetrate the market in the CFTA in terms of export opportunities. We should also look at our defensive interest, our crafted defensive strategy to deal with issues of market flooding, because as Maria has indicated, we are going to deal with bigger economies, the likes of Nigeria and others. We also take note that Namibia is a member of the SACO, and we belong to an existing customs union. And we have seen that in terms of the 2002 SACO agreement, we have not established a SACO tariff board, which is the key to deal with the issues of the application of trade measures. Maria has already indicated those anti-dumping, counterfeiting, as well as safeguards. So I think for now, while at the regional level it's very difficult, our focus, I just want to emphasize that as the point was already highlighted, that the Board of Trade, operationalization of the Board of Trade is very important. As we prepare for this CFTA to enter the market, we should have the Board of Trade to deal with the application of the trade remedies as provided for in the CFTA agreement. Okay. The last one, which is
My name is Helen Kogu. My day job is Director for Corporate Affairs for Nestlé Limited. But as you know, I'm here on vacation, but I cannot not take this opportunity. So I actually met Maria in Lusaka about 5 years ago, when we were both representing our respective countries, having the policy discussions around this FCF. And it's really beautiful to be here at a time when it's actually coming to fruition with our input. And now we're discussing how we're going to implement it. My question, and the one thing that we do struggle with, even in South Africa, is logistics. So is Namibia ready in terms of logistics, ports, rail, roads, companies with trucks and everything else that is needed to fully exploit this very beautiful opportunity that we all have as Africans? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for the lady who highlighted that gender balance.
Thank you.
All right. My name is Mansweta Hakabu. I come from Standard Bank. And I would like to actually respond to Ms. Batia.
Yes.
Thank you. I was thinking if I'm going to say it right. Who mentioned in her speech or her comments that the banks need to be here. I understand Nathan is over here, so we are here, and I would like to just put out a comment to say yes, we are in the money-making business, but we are also committed to the journey. Specifically, Standard Bank has embarked on the journey of supporting trade, of facilitating trade and it's one of our focus, specifically in the SME industry, where, you know, just from a basic information perspective, you would expect that your SME are new in the trading business and wouldn't really have the basic information, which is what we're talking about right now. And we are also very interested. I was listening to the Pan-African payment system, which the bank would be very interested in because it's one of the portions that we'll actually plug into. But understanding also from a Namibian perspective how active is the system and coordinate on how we can plug into it so that we can support our clients or our businesses who would like to, you know, trade with the rest of the continent. We have a lot of initiatives in terms of trading and supporting trade. And mine is actually not a question, it's just to mention that we are here as financial institutions and our commitment has already started last year. And we are actually thankful for being invited to the sessions, even though we know we are not actively trading as yet, but just to be from the beginning or from the start and understand what our role should be when we are actually ready to start trading and supporting those clients. Thank you.
Within the trading fraternity, I would cite PIGET because, yes, it's something that has happened. Now, under the rules of origin, you would note that I mentioned two main criteria, which is your substantial transformation. I think Mr. Nashikaku also alluded to the fact of tariff lines that they are still busy, that we are still busy finalizing. Now, under rules of origin, your tariff lines are specific in the sense that if it's a motor vehicle, there would be certain requirements that a country or a product must meet in order to be conferring that originating status. Now, with PIGET, unfortunately, what happened, you need to assemble, yes, but there are parts and particles that needs to form the entire process. So with PIGET, basically, it's a body that comes in and it's minor, you know, the adding of tires and whatnot, that is done here. So that does not transform that product because if it's declared in the country of origin where it's coming from, it's already a body of a car, you know, complete. And once it comes here, that minor addition does not add the required value for that car to be exported as a car manufactured in Namibia. But had the body came from, for instance, South Africa, Botswana, or you know, there's the aspect of accumulation, regional accumulation, where you can source your products from within the region and then still benefit. South Africa is manufacturing vehicles right now, right? They are getting their the seat covers, for instance, from Lesotho, getting other parts from other countries within the region, add the value, and then export. So that is actually also what we as a country are supposed to do, and that's why I would reiterate and re-emphasize the fact that if and when producers want to export, approach our offices. We are willing and able to assist, just to guide you in terms of what you are producing, does it meet the requirements? That is basically what transpired. But going forward, even with the launch here and going forward, once we are ready to trade, there would be platforms where the traders would, there would be stakeholder engagements, where the traders would be informed in terms of what is really required from them, from us, from all the known players, so that we really benefit optimally from the agreement. Yes, it was also alluded to how are we prepared. I've alluded that in terms of the certificates, we are ready, the steps, we are ready, and currently you can export, yes, as it was said, but you will get the most favored nation rate of duty. But if and when we are at the point of fully implementing, that's where you will get the benefits of the final reduced rate. I think, I hope I've answered your question.
Indeed.
Lot of trade is very much important for your policy space, and also in order to address your support that you want to give to your industry, which is very much important when we are actually talking about market access. What's actually very much important is for us to be able to increase our production capacities in order to so that we are able to have products, therefore, that can go to the rest of the market. But now in terms of, and that can only be achieved if you are able then to stimulate your production capacities through now, for example, now, and to be able to have policy space to do that, through now the board of trade that have been mentioned. Now, where are we in terms of the establishment of the board of trade? Currently, the board of trade, the regulation, the bill, is an international trade management bill. And as a result of that bill, then we'll be able then to have what you call a commission, a trade commission, which was now called previously the board of trade. Now, the regulations have been drafted. The bill, in fact, have been drafted. Currently, this bill is sitting with what we call the committee, the Cabinet Committee on Legal. And probably this year or early next year, we are sure that at least this bill will then be tabled in Parliament and then be finalized. And then work will have to continue now to establish what we call a trade commission. With a trade commission, you'll be able then to identify your key sectors that the government would like them to support to increase now their production capacity and diversify their products so that you are able then to access the markets in the continent. That is one. The other issue that I wanted then to mention is the issue, maybe the question of the issue of the outstanding tariff. I should mention that it is very much difficult, and probably before maybe I mention that, I should maybe go to the structure of the negotiation itself. The structures allow for an exclusion list of 3%, and then a sensitivity list of 7%, and then 90% of tariff lines that need to be liberalized over the period that I have specified. Now, currently, within the framework of SADC, we have the big brother South Africa. They also need to protect, in other words, that 3% is what each of the 5 member states want to put their most important products. In other words, to protect your industries. Because we have also asked the question of how do you want to protect, why we must not allow flooding of other products to come into the Africa, in our market, the Namibian market. And therefore, one of the strategies is for us to be able then to have our sensitivities in the exclusion list. Meaning, if you are producing a product, it will not be able to undermine by the flooding of other products. But now, as 5 member states, all of us want to make sure that our sensitivities is secured. Okay, I just wanted to mention that so that at least it's not actually only the other member states who are having difficulties to come on board. It's a question of negotiating within the SADC framework. But I should inform you that at least currently South Africa and Botswana happen to come on board. They are going to release about 14 tariff lines. And we are actually looking at Chapter 93, Arms and Ammunition, which does not have any economic value. And probably in a very much near future, we'll be able to reach an agreement and then submit our offer that meet the modality for tariff liberalization. In terms of vision, I did not want really to leave this particular discussion without mentioning actually the issue of future. But I should also say that car industry can also drive industrialization. But of course, if you look at the history, South Africa and Morocco manufacturing automobile vehicles. Namibia is a new hindrance into the car industry. We manage at least to have what we call an assembly. Of course, our value content is very low. It is maybe between 15 to 25%. But of course, the agreement that we are negotiating now, we are saying allow Namibia to be able to have its speech under now the AfCFTA framework, add value of 30%, and still be able then to export this particular vehicle in the country. But of course, we are still in that particular negotiation. So what it actually means is currently we have an outstanding negotiating issues on rules of origin, which is now one of it is automotive, the other one is rules of origin, and also textile and clothing. So these are the areas that are currently outstanding. Now, lastly, maybe just to add up the confusion here, the tariff reduction commitments, as we have negotiated, we have to look at smaller economies. And therefore we said, smaller economies, you should be able to reduce your tariff cuts over a period of 10 years, whereas bigger economies, you reduce your tariffs over a period of 5 years. I just wanted to make that one clear. And also to make it also very much clear,